seasoned consultant working with MUFG in the UK. He has been in and around the tech sector for very long now, and then he has experience implementing financial software in related industries. And so he's going to be taking us on how to develop software for regulated industries today. And then it's going to be a very, very interactive and engaging webinar, and I hope you really enjoy it. Before we start though, I would like to let everyone know that if you have questions, you can just type in on the chat box. You should be seeing it on the right side of your screen. And then by the end of the presentation, I would go through all the questions, and then John can go ahead and answer all of the questions. All right. So now I hand over to John, and John, let's take this away.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me clearly. If you can't, just let the moderator know through the chat, and
Okay.
we can sort that out. Okay, I'm too close to the mic. Any better? Does it sound okay? Any issues, let me know. Okay, so good afternoon, and welcome to this session titled FinTech Regulation: How to Develop Software for Regulated Industries. I hope you've had a productive week so far, or at least a productive day. It's really an honor to be able to speak to like-minded people, and hopefully we can both gain some insights into how to make a difference using technology. Right, so what is my aim today? The main aim of this is to have a shift in your mindset. I'm not here to teach you how to program. I'm not here to teach you how to implement software. It's really shifting your mindset when it comes to developing software, because a lot of people just code, which is good. As programmers, we get excited. We just want to write stuff that solves problems. But sometimes, and what I've realized in the length of my career, is that we spend a lot of time firefighting, which I don't really think is the best way to do things. So hopefully I can change some mindsets here today, and then my job will be done, especially when it comes to regulation. So before I do that, I think it's always good to know who you're talking to. So I'm going to introduce myself a bit. On the slide, it says I am a software solutions engineer. That's just a fancy way of saying I deliver software. I deliver software for clients in the financial services. I've been doing it for almost 15 years now. And if you're anything like me, you're probably now, this is the point where you try and work out my age. 15 years of experience. Focus on the webinar for now. Maybe someone can try and guess my age and put it in the chat, and then whoever gets it spot on will get a round of applause. However we can do that over a webinar. Anyway, 15 years. To me, it feels like a long time. Half of that time I've spent in the regulatory space. So about 7-8 years. And like I said earlier on, what I've realized is I've spent a lot of those years firefighting. People write software, and then regulation comes in, and then we're firefighting, trying to fix issues, or trying to align it to deal with regulatory issues. and it costs people so much money and so much time. And the hope is that after this, when some of you leave here, if you work in the financial services or any regulated industry, when you start to write a piece of code, you start to think of the regulatory side of things as well. To be honest, the main skills, I'd like to say I'm a Microsoft stack person, so anything .NET related excites me. So Microsoft Service Bus for pub sub messaging, SQL Server, Web API stuff, but generally I'm open-minded to any new technologies, because that's what I do, and so any sort of new technology excites me, and IT is quite exciting at the moment. Right, so you can see a lot of names with 2, 3, 4 on it. That's literally all the sort of regulatory projects that I've worked on in the past 7 years. So Solvency 2 was in the insurance industry. Basically, the government says, well, if you're going to take all these investments, so all these insurance policies, if you bust, can you pay, or if you have X amount of claims, can you you have sufficient funds to actually mitigate this risk? So all the insurance companies said, oh, well, we need to develop software to see if we're solvent or not. And then CAD 2, CAD 3, Basel 3, Basel 4, different regulations. They come up with, it's like they come up with it randomly once every 6 months. They come up with a new regulation that people need to do. And so banks and insurance companies or regulated companies keep chasing to meet these requirements. So that's what I've done for the last sort of 7 years, and because of the pain that I've been through in that time, I really would hope that the next sort of, well, at least the near future, when people develop software, they think about their regulation before they start. Okay, so straight into the subject. RegTech, how do you define, or what does RegTech mean? Well, really, it's just formed of a combination of 2 words, which is regulatory technology, and it's how we use innovation to solve regulatory problems. And it's relatively new within financial services. Well, the term is relatively new within financial services, because RegTech have actually been around for a long time. Now, it's been around for a long time, but with all these traditional banks and the old sort of systems that they used in the past, they struggled to come up with solutions to deal with their regulatory requirements. And so what's happened now is, with the advent of new technologies, and you've got really smart people out there, and a lot of technologies a lot cheaper, RegTech has sprung up from nowhere, and is sort of taken over. And what it's doing is it's solving a lot of issues that the banks couldn't solve, or the banks have taken a long time to solve. So it's making quite a huge, a significant difference in the financial services industry. So in summary, really, it's just a new buzzword, but it's taking shape, and it's quite an exciting time. As I'm changing the slides, I hope you can see that I'm changing those slides. If not, let me know on the chat. Okay, so RegTech really focuses on 3 main parts of financial services, and those 3 are regulatory reporting, transaction monitoring, and compliance. Now, with regulatory reporting, you saw all the CAD 2, Solvency 2, Basel 3 things that I listed there. Basically, these are reports that financial services organizations need to provide to the regulator to say we're still solvent, or to say that they are doing things in the right way. And so they invest a lot of money in regulatory reporting, because if they don't meet certain deadlines to deliver these things, they get a huge fine. Transaction monitoring. Now, the emphasis behind that is we need to know why people are spending money and what they're spending it on, or why money is coming into the economy and what it's being used for, because ultimately people have found ways to use the financial services industry to clean up the funds that they've realized from doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And so ultimately, the only way that you can stop these things is by monitoring the transactions, and hopefully in a smart way detect when someone is doing something they shouldn't be doing, whether it be fraudulent, whether it be terrorist financing or drug trafficking. So that's a really huge part of RegTech. And then compliance. So, the financial services company might be, I've got a chat here, let me just check. Background noise. Okay. I don't have background noise here, so I don't think that's coming from me. If anyone, maybe someone needs to mute. An itchy sound, right? Okay, could be my mic. Is that any better? Have we still got the itchy sound? Right, okay, thanks. Right, so compliance. So, okay, we do a lot of reporting on all the regulation, but are you actually compliant? So if your organization goes down today, or are you able to support all the sort of transactions that your organization is doing? Is what happened in the financial crisis in 2008, was that Lehman Brothers didn't have enough capital to support the trade that it was doing, and so when it went down, it affected the financial services industry. And so in order to avoid that happening again, we need to make sure that all these banks and all these financial services companies are compliant. So I think, as you can see, it's generally basically just trying to ensure that financial services organizations are doing the things that they're supposed to do, and they're doing the right thing, so that everything that does not affect the layman on the street. Okay, so how is RegTech known? What we found is that in the fintech space, the regulatory bodies have not had a stronghold on startups or fintechs since the financial crisis of 2008, because what they wanted to do was foster the growth of innovation and allow people to use new technologies to make a difference. And so a lot of people are doing a lot of very fancy things and very interesting stuff. But everyone needs to be regulated, because at some point somebody starts to use the technology for the wrong thing. And so for this reason, there's been, a need or a call by regulators to say, okay, well, we've got all these great apps doing great things now. We need to be able to regulate them. And so there's been a growth in companies saying, okay, or people saying, well, I'm going to start regulating this sector by writing software using all these new and funky innovation that's in the market. Now, the reason it's been grown as well is in the traditional model, or in traditional banks, they all try to do all the regulation at once. So, for instance, a bank has to do its KYC, which is know your customer, anti-money laundering. They also have to do all the regulatory compliance, which is their CAD2s, their Solvent 2s, and fundamental reviews of their trading book. Now, what RegTechs are doing is they're picking one of these areas or a subsection of that area and focusing on that area. So they zoom in on one particular task, and so it's a term that we call unbundling. So they're taking a whole bundle of regulation and they're unbundling it, and it makes them very competitive because they can then say or sell it to different market players, and so that's really made things grow quite fast. So why is this important? This is important because like I said earlier on, when we don't monitor things, people tend to do bad things, or when things aren't monitored, people take advantage of the system. And so it's quite important that RegTech is implemented. So, for instance, in the know your customers space, if you're onboarding customers in your application, you need to know what type of person they are. Are they politically exposed people? Do they pose a risk to your organization? You don't want to get into business with basically somebody who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So ultimately, before you onboard a customer, you need to really know who they are, and try and find out all the relationships have or that their businesses have, to be able to find out what sort of person they are. Because if you don't, we move on to the next point, which is anti-money laundering. So if you don't know your customer up front, there's a slight chance that the customer might be placing money in your organization for things that they I just got a pop-up message that said speak louder. So I'm just right. Okay, sorry, slight distraction. So you want to prevent people from laundering money. So the placement of money, which basically means that people money that they've gained from criminal activities and try and put them in financial services. The layering of money, so they want to disguise that money by saying, okay, we've placed it somewhere and then as a deposit, and then we're going to change that deposit into some sort of financial instrument. I don't know, like a bond, so that they can hide the source of that income, and then they move it around so that they can reintegrate it into the economy. So it's important that systems are built to detect these sorts of financial transactions, because if they don't, then these money or this money can be put into the economy and be used for things that they really shouldn't be doing, which then moves on to the next point of financing terrorism. Now, when someone's been able to place their money from criminal activities into the financial services, they're able to do things like finance terrorism. And that's why in areas in the world where we would say, for instance, in the country where I'm from, we say, we like life, we don't blow ourselves up, we don't do things like terrorism. Well, hey, in any economy where there's money from crime or there's corruption, you will have things like terrorism happen. And unfortunately, that seems to be happening in the region where I'm from at the moment. So having software that can deal with KYC and anti-money laundering will ultimately detect terrorism financing. And the last point, which is human trafficking, which is one that's quite close to me, is it's pretty staggering how much money is made from human trafficking. I think it's about $150 billion is made from human trafficking on a yearly basis. That is a staggering amount of money. One human in the USA, one human being is sold for 7,000 US dollars. That's pretty staggering. And this is the sort of thing that if we have the right things in place and we have the right software in place, we can avoid that. You know, I can't even what anyone would, or start to imagine how anyone would go through something as terrible as human trafficking. And that's why basically why RegTech is important, to stop these things ultimately. Okay, so this slide I call the $1 billion slide. So this zooms in on the importance of cost, why it's really important. So since the crash or the financial crash in 2008, there have been 300 billion US dollars of fines from financial firms or from firms globally. Now that is a lot of money, right? And on a yearly basis, companies are spending 70 billion US dollars to fund their compliance. So they're spending $70 to make sure that they're compliant. That is a lot. Hello. Sorry, guys. I think I lost connection there. Can you hear me now? Right, great. Thanks. So yes, back to the $1 billion slide. 300 billion in fines from firms, a staggering number. 70 billion to fund compliance annually. And it's expected to rise to 118 billion by 2020. That bothers me, to think that an extra $50 billion will be spent in the next 2 years. Yes, those are global statistics. So imagine if that $40 billion was spent on addressing poverty. That's what I'd rather that money was built, was used for, rather than building software to deal with these issues. And the reason we're spending this money is because we keep firefighting, because every time we write software, we're not writing software that's actually dealing with the problem up front. So, you know, I think that, you know, if people can change their mindsets on how they invent or they write software, it would make a huge difference. Second. Okay, so what are the benefits of RegTech software? It ultimately reduces costs, because basically, although there's the upfront cost of actually building software, once it's in there, there's you're not firefighting, so you're not trying to adapt your systems to deal with issues, because you've written your software to deal with the issues up front. And so in the long run, it does reduce costs for your company. It improves efficiency. Why do I say it improves efficiency? Is anyone on here in compliance by any chance? If anyone is in compliance, just say yes. I've been into compliance offices, and they have stacks and stacks of papers under their desks, on top of their desks, everywhere. And in this day and age, or in this digital age, this is not something that we should be doing, right? Hello, I lost my connection again. So sorry about this. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Where was I? Okay, improves efficiency. So in a compliance department, if you can digitize a lot of your work up front, you don't need customers to bring documents into you. You don't need to, you can take documents or ask them to upload them onto your, I don't know, whether it's your web server or your software as a service somewhere, rather than having loads of documents on your desk or in your table or in your office. So if you can digitize things like that, it will improve efficiency. What it will also do is it will reduce operational risk. Now, I don't know about any of you, but you know, sometimes I have a bad day at the office. If I have a, sorry, I have a bad day at home. If I get to the office, you know, I might not be in a good mood. And so if I'm not in a good mood, it might mean that I'm sharp as I need to be. Now, that's a human being, and a human being might miss, say for instance, in anti-money laundering, might miss a transaction that's fraudulent. Now, if this is all digitized and computerized, then it's more efficient because yeah, software, they have no feelings, right? So they don't, you know, they don't have bad days or good days. They're consistent in what they do. If they do things well, they do it well consistently. If they do it badly, they do it badly consistently. At least you can get consistency from stuff. So that reduces operational risk. It also standardizes your approach. Now, we're all software, well, a few of us on here are software developers, and so having a standardized way of doing things, we know that helps. And so ultimately, if you standardize the way that you do your software development and include RegTech, well, wear a RegTech hat when you are writing your software, and that will mean that things will get standardized within your organization. It means that you then start to reap the benefits as time goes on. Right, what are the attributes of a RegTech software? They're always customizable. They have to be customizable, because if you build software that's not customizable or easily customizable, then it means you're defeating the point of trying to save cost. So you need to write your software in a way that it adapts. Why does it need to adapt? Like I said before, regulatory requirements change. Sometimes monthly, sometimes 6 monthly, they change and new ones come out every year. So you need to be able to customize your software to deal with those. So you need to be able to